Willkommen, bienvenue, privyat, konnichiwa, ahlan, hola, and hello. We would like to welcome you to Creation ModCon 2021. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Trent Sparks, one of the voice actors for Beyond Skyrim, and the first of several MCs to guide you through this dangerous con. Well, okay, it's not really all that dangerous, but you gotta sell it where you can. Anyway, over the next 2 days, we will be presenting panels featuring members from the various teams of Skywind, Skyblivion, Beyond Skyrim, and the Arcane University. Each panel will have a set of predetermined questions and an audience Q&A. So if you have a question that you would like to ask, please feel free to put those in the chat with question in all caps, and our question masters will scoop them up and deliver them to us in Discord. If you'd like to see the schedule for ModCon or learn more about any of the individual various project teams, you can find those links to each of those in the description below this video. Now, for the first of these 2 days, here's what we've got lined up. Now, please remember all of these times that I'm about to list are UTC, so that you can make adjustments to your own time zone so you can figure out when it is. Coming up right here at 4 p.m., which was actually about a minute and a half ago, the first panel will be the yardsticks of No, not yards. Some people use metric. Let's call it the rulers of Tamriel. That's much more applicable, which will be leads from the various teams talking about what goes into running a project and whatnot. Immediately after that, there will be a short intermission, and at 5 p.m., there is the 12 Worlds, which will be the level designers talking about how you use the creation kit to create a world like Tamriel. After that, at 6 p.m. UTC, is the Throats of the World, which is a few of us voice actors talking about what we do and how it fits into the project. After that, at 7 p.m. UTC, is Debella's Chosen, which is the 2D and 3D artists talking about how their process works. At 8 p.m. UTC, the Fan Art Contest. Ooh. Actually, it kind of sounded like it was haunted, which it's not. It could be, may not be. I don't know. We'll see when we get there. And finally, at 9 p.m., we have the Skyblivion Walkabout, which several members of the Skyblivion team will take us on a lovely stroll through Cyrodiil as it exists in their project. And you get to see what kind of stuff that they've built, which should be really, really cool. And that will wrap up today's schedule, and then we'll have a whole nother schedule for tomorrow. But as I said, the first of the panels that we're going to be doing is the Rulers of Tamriel, where we're going to be talking to the various team leads and what goes into running a team. So let's go ahead and bring these fine folks in. And who we have on this thing is Bellatrix for Cyrodiil. Actually, you guys were going to introduce yourselves, weren't you?
Would you like me to start?
Well, I already said your name, so yeah, you probably should.
Hi, I'm Bellatrix. I'm a project co-lead for Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil, and I'm also a project lead for Beyond Skyrim Roscrea.
Lovely. And Rob?
Well, hello. Yes, so I am the Elsewhere lead and have been for some time, and I also look after Beyond Skyrim PR as well.
And Nariel?
Hi, I'm Nariel. I'm a writer on Beyond Skyrim Roscrea and a concept artist on Skywind. However, I'm here among the rulers of Tamriel because I'm one of the 3 leaders at the Arcane University, where we teach folks how to mod.
Rebel.
Hello, friends. I am Rebel or Rebel Size. I'm the project lead for Skyblivion, where I make myself useful however I can.
And finally, Zix.
Yo, I'm Zix. I'm one of several leads over at Skywind. We don't have any singular project lead, but I'm here to represent the larger body of us, and hopefully I'm on my best behavior today.
Maybe, hopefully. I mean, could be interesting. Could get exciting. Who knows? So let's go ahead and start out with kind of a general overall question. It's going to be a little bit vague, but what's it like leading a project for something like this? Let's go ahead and start with Bellatrix again.
Oh, it's a very interesting experience leading a project like this. So it'd be interesting to see what everyone else's experience is. But we have, especially with Cyrodiil, we've got hundreds of people across all sorts of different time zones and with all sorts of different interests. And then effectively, we just have to, it's a massive amount of coordination, just making sure that the sort of the plans that we have for the next few months, everyone knows what we're working on. And we can sort of move it along piece by piece. It's an awful lot of coordination, problem solving, trying to recruit people to get past bottlenecks that we might have, coordinating with other projects to make sure that everything all lines up. But yeah, mostly my job is coordination to make sure that everything runs smoothly and everyone else can play their part.
Rebel?
Quite a different answer. For me, leading a project feels a lot like steering a ship. People look up to you because you can move a really big wheel around, but the real work is done below deck. I mean, we have a really big team of very talented individuals working on Skyblivion every single day. And really, all I do is make sure that the ship is steered mostly in the right direction, which for the past 5 years I've been able to do semi-successfully. Yeah, other than that, I mean, being a lead, it takes a lot of time and effort. Maybe more importantly, it takes heart. If you don't have a love for the franchise and the people you work with, then you can't really expect to be, a good lead and inspire your team. We all work jobs. I myself have a full-time job as well, or we have families. So, I have a bit of experience of working a job with people who don't enjoy what they do. So that can really suck the motivation out of you. And I think the cool thing about a project like this is you work with like-minded individuals who join the project for the love of the games, of the franchise, of the community. And that's something really special to be a part of.
Cool. Zix?
Oh boy. I think the other two hit it pretty dang well. I guess the only thing I could probably add is, as a lead, you sort of have to. I don't lead the greater project as a whole. Trust me, several of us do, but you sort of have to have a balance between, you want to give people time to do their things. You also have to have sort of expectations for people. So just trying to have like a balance between, morale and then also, having the opportunity to say, hey, let's do some things. We're all working towards a common goal with passion in mind, with, hard work in mind. And we all want to make something cool. So having like a communal mindset towards that is something that's huge. And morale goes a long way in making that happen.
Rob?
Yeah, so I would echo what everyone else has said with the addition that I am a manager in real life, and this is completely different. It really makes you work very, very hard on your soft skills because you, as Bellatrix said, people have to want to do things. At work, you just say, "This is your job, do it, and do it now." You can't do that in a volunteer project because otherwise everyone would leave. So it really, really does test you as a person. The other thing I would say is that it teaches you the art of compromise. You have to compromise. You can't just come in as a lead and say, right, I want A, B, C, D. I want them all done. You have to realize that these are volunteers with, as Rebel said, with their own lives, and so you have to compromise quite a lot. But it is extremely rewarding, and I actually find being a lead of Beyond Skyrim quite humbling as well.
And as the one who's got a very different team, Nariel.
Yeah, well, the Arcane University is obviously a modding school, not a project. So leading that will be very different from making, an actual mod. Most of our work just go into making sure that all of the students are learning stuff that's actually relevant to the partner projects, and making sure that we're staying on top of all the workflows that all of the different projects use, pretty much.
Cool.
Just being there for the students with any questions they have.
Awesome. So our next question is, it involves what is oftentimes referred to as churn, where you have people who will join the project, will stick around for a little while, and then wind up leaving and then come back, and constantly having to replace people. So how do you handle the comings and goings of the various volunteers that are involved with your teams? And I'm going to start with Rob on this one.
So yes, it is unfortunately a large part of what we do. It happens a lot, and it often happens at inopportune times. And unlike work, where everyone gets a cake and a party, or at least a card, people in volunteer projects typically just disappear and never say a word. So that can be a little bit difficult to get used to. But once you're familiar with the process, you then, okay, that person's left. You send them a couple of DMs, they don't reply. Okay, they've unfortunately left. Elsewhere is in a rather unique position compared to some of the other projects, in that due to our size and the how much the public are excited about us compared to the other projects, we have to actually directly recruit. So we actually go out and recruit people actively rather than passively waiting for people to come and say, I'd love to work on elsewhere. So that's probably a big difference for us. We actually have to go out and actively replace people that leave.
All right. Zix?
I'd say that churn is a pretty big challenge. I mean, I think that's obvious, but it's kind of something you have to deal with. We're all volunteer projects, and people are going to come and go. People are going to have things come up in their life, or people are just going to burn out, because that's a very real thing. Sometimes you just have slow periods. Sometimes you have really, really active periods of like time, and it honestly just depends on who's there at the time. If more people come in, it's usually a super awesome thing. Morale is high, and everybody's working really, really hard on everything. And then you have slow periods where you sort of kind of have to get back into the recruitment drive and sort of wait for extra people to come along, and then it's very challenging, and you just kind of have to go with the flow. That's really all I would say.
Okay. And Rebel?
Well, I mean, as you say, we're all volunteers who work on a project like this in our free time, and sometimes, unfortunately, this means people have to step down and focus on other priorities. It's a really big part of these volunteer projects, and perhaps one of the biggest challenges that I think we all face day to day. But instead, it's something that I really choose to celebrate. I think it's easy to sit here and be disappointed of all the people who chose to leave the project, but instead, I think it's absolutely wonderful that there are hundreds of people at this point who have chosen to join these projects in their free time and feel like what we're doing here is cool and special enough to want to tag along and help where they can. At the end of the day, every little bit helps, and many hands make light work. And it doesn't matter if you create an entire city tile set, or if all you contributed was a set of spoons. At the end of the day, it's one step closer to that release date, which we're all striving for. So while it is unfortunate sometimes the way that people disappear without saying anything or without handing their work in, I still think it's a very unique position to be in, that you literally have people coming to you to see what they can do to help out reach that release goal that we all strive for. So I think it's very cool, but also, like everyone else says, a big challenge to keep under control and keep morale high and keep people moving forward.
Righty. So, with regard to the various projects kind of interfacing with each other, how has Skyblivion and Skywind and Beyond Skyrim collaborated in the past? And are there any ways that they could collaborate in the future? And if you want to kind of chime in on a kind of a secondary half of that question, when would it be appropriate to collaborate and not? Let's start this one with Nariel.
Well, the Arcane University is just one big collaboration. The university isn't truly a separate thing from either of the big projects. We are the collective effort of our partner projects. So, for example, all of our partner projects have at least one teacher in the university. Because of this, we have a great collection of experienced modders in one place without putting strain on a single project. And in return for providing a teacher, the university provides a place to send any promising recruit, and we teach them the skills they need to join the project. But there's much more to the partnership between our projects and the university than just that. But it boils down to that everyone pitches in to create a learning platform that everyone benefits from.
And Rebel.
I think the collaborating it is a bit of a complicated topic because we have all these different projects with different visions, different art styles, and in the case of Beyond Skyrim, especially different biomes. You know, you have projects taking place in Cyrodiil, Argonia, elsewhere, you name it, and that makes it sometimes difficult to find areas to find some overlap. Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil and Skyblivion, for instance, is a good example of successful collaborations. We've tried to collaborate in the past, exchange flora or architecture with each other, and help each other out where we can. Skywind as well. I believe they're using some of our trees. Something that we're using from them is the lava assets, which work very nicely in the Oblivion realms. So I think there definitely is room to collaborate, and it's something that I think at the end of the day benefits all the parties involved. If we can give you something that means you don't have to make that thing yourself anymore, which means you can focus on something else. So I'm very, very happy to see that we've been able to collaborate so far. And moving forward, I would love to try and keep that collaboration going. I think at the end of the day, we're all part of the same team. I know we're different projects, and we're all trying to release our own vision. But at the end of the day, we're all part of the Skyrim modding community, which we're actually here to celebrate this weekend as well. So collaboration is a really big part of that, I think. And moving forward, I hope this only gets better and better.
And Bellatrix.
Yeah, for me, it's really interesting hearing Rebel talk about that, because obviously we collaborate with Skyblivion, but from the Beyond Skyrim side. So I guess for me, we like to collaborate where we can. So obviously things like the Alien tile set, that was a huge piece of work, and both projects share it. So that's really helped us. But there are also areas where we can't particularly or might not want to collaborate quite as much. So Skyblivion are recreating Oblivion in the Skyrim engine, whereas we're recreating Cyrodiil as it is in the Skyrim timeline. So that gives us a slightly sort of different direction to take the mod in. So things like clothing might have changed in the 200 years since Oblivion was sort of released, or even things like we have more freedom in terms of Bethesda always talk about there's a sort of cultural divide between Clovia and Nibony. But you never, or for me, you never really felt that whilst playing Oblivion. Whereas because we're sort of creating things in our own timeline, that's given us a lot more freedom to actually make different clothing for each area and different cutlery for each area, just so that we can take what Bethesda said and then make it feel a bit more real. Whereas I don't think that's quite the intent with Skyblivion, or as an outsider I get the impression that's not quite the intent with Skyblivion. But yeah, certainly we collaborate where we can. Actually, we do share a lot of members between teams, so I know there's people that are on Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil who are also on Skyblivion and vice versa, so they might have been on Skyblivion and then joined Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil.
Okay. So this one is a little bit on the convoluted side, but stick with me, we'll get there. What I'd like you guys to talk about is, or rather are, the differences between leading a province that has a previous Elder Scrolls title and one that doesn't, now that is ignoring Elder Scrolls Online, kind of set that aside. But what are the challenges of dealing with existing like nostalgia versus creating things brand new? I suppose I should probably pick which one of you I want to answer this. Well, Bellatrix, you just got finished talking, so I'm going to torture your vocal cords more. Go.
That's absolutely fine. So I'm in quite a unique position here. So I lead or co-lead a team where obviously Cyrodiil has been released in previous games and there's an awful weight of lore and history and nostalgia there. But I also lead Beyond Skyrim Roscrea, which I think has about 2 lines of lore associated with it about Emperor Uriel Septim V conquering it, and that's about all we know. So I feel like I've experienced both extremes, and I'd say they have their pros and cons. So Cyrodiil, it's not easy, but it's relatively easy. So we've got all this history, we know what's happened, we know who the main sort of families and players are, and we can sort of take those stories and run with them and bring them up to the modern time. But obviously there's a whole weight of expectation around that. People sort of have their opinions of what it should be like and what they expect from us. So I guess you have a little bit less creative freedom. So there's quite a lot of freedom within the stories, but there's certain themes that we probably need to run with. And then there's all sorts of nostalgia. So hopefully a lot of people will have played Bruma and gone to see Cloud Rule the Temple. And we have to kind of nod to what's gone before, but hopefully have a fresh take on it. So I really liked how Cloud Rule the Temple turned out. The first time I went in there in game, it gave me a lump in my throat. But it's making sure we actually get that right and do something that's sort of worthy of what's gone before. Whereas with Roscrea, it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So yes, we don't really know anything about it, so that gives us a lot more creative freedom. But then that's almost a problem in itself, because where do you actually start? You could take it in any direction. So a lot of what we did when the mod restarted back in, I think it was 2015, was actually sitting down and coming up with a coherent vision for what we actually wanted Roscrea to be. So we did take some inspiration from Skyrim, so there's a lot of references from the sort of the animal symbols that you see in Draugr dungeons, but we've taken those themes and run with them. There's a lot about sort of new beginnings and things on Roscrea as well, but yeah, so they're very different. One is almost a completely blank canvas, but then you have to work out what you actually want to do with it. And then if you're working with something that's gone before, you're a lot more constrained, but in some ways that does actually help you.
Nice. Rob.
Yeah, so we're sort of in the middle. We do have a TES game. We don't have a TES game, rather, but we do have more lore than Roscrea. So although we don't have quite the same level of freedom, we do share the lack of a TES game, which in our case leads to a significantly reduced audience for Elsewhere. But we do get freedom. So how we deal with it is that we take what we have, and we've become hyper organized. I spend an awful lot of time organizing the team and making sure that everything's documented and as up to date as possible, so that we can make as much as we can out of what we have. And we also try to reduce churn, so that when we get somebody, we keep them. And as Rebel said, that they contribute, which pushes our mod forward.
Mm-hmm. And finally, Zix.
Hooray. I love this question, mainly because it pertains a whole lot to my project, Skywind. We have to deal with the nostalgia of having the first modern, like Elder Scrolls game, as well as, making something completely new, which is what we ultimately want to do. It's easy to sort of look at like the scope of our project as an outsider and say, oh, they're just going to recreate Morrowind with like the rose-colored glasses and everything, 1-to-1. Or, it's also easy to sort of look at our project and say, oh, well, they're doing everything completely different. And, it's going to be like a Geiger version of Morrowind, where in reality, it's also not that. it's really difficult to actually strike a balance. Mainly because we have a large team, we have a lot of people with a lot of passion coming on. Everybody wants to have sort of like they all have their own sort of thoughts on it, so it's either closer to like nostalgia or like a purist side, which is kind of what I'm on that sort of side. But there's also like a bunch of people that want to do something completely new. So when we have like our concept artists creating something like the Stronghold set, for example, like the Dunmary Strongholds, right? The really big gray boxes that were on Morrowind that really didn't make any sense aside from like what was in the lore. We're recreating those to like push them in a different direction, just to give it a new breath of life, something completely new, to keep the same sort of atmosphere about them, but make them more sense towards what we're actually going for. And that's sort of a challenging thing because people are going to say, hey, it's not one to one. Well, my argument would be if it's exactly one to one, then what's the point? If you want to go play Morrowind, right? If you want to go play Oblivion, go play Oblivion. But if you want to play something completely new, try one of the projects that we're making. It's something that Skywind has problems with basically all the time because people have different views, and I'm sure the other projects do as well. But I love this question because the discourse on it can just go on and on and on forever. You could, have 10 different timelines, and Skywind, for example, would be different in all 10 different timelines. One of which might be, completely vanilla experience. But yeah.
And Rebel, did you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, I'll keep my answer short since we've had some great answers to this one already. But from my experience, recreating a game like Skyblivion, which is a remake of Oblivion, it comes with some challenges and also opportunities. Good opportunities are that you can build off of the nostalgia and the image that you may have in your own mind. I have this very colorful image of playing Oblivion years and years ago when I played it for the first time, and that's kind of what you're trying to rebuild, because when you go back into the games now, they don't look nearly as good or nearly as big as you remember them. So that gives you a bit of an edge because you kind of in your head know what you're building towards. You also know, because you played the game through and through, what made it great and what made it overwhelming. So that gives you 2 points to focus on. One, the things that made it great, you want to double down on. The things that were underwhelming, you want to find a way to try and improve this without completely changing the formula. A challenge is definitely that people have certain expectations and sometimes can get a bit stuck in what they want or expect from you. Something that was brought up a lot in the past for Skyblivion is that, for instance, our mountain ranges, like the Jarl Mountains, the Colovian Highlands, and the Valus Mountains, are now actual mountain ranges, whereas in Oblivion they were mostly hills with pieces of rock dotted across it, which made it explorable, but the only way to explore them was to spam jump, and there was nothing to really find. But then when people saw mountains in Skyblivion, they were like, okay, but now I can't go anywhere I want. So that's a bit of an area where you can lose something, which in this case is the opportunity to jump everywhere. But what you win is a lot more detailed environments that have actual content for you to explore and find, which I think has a lot more value compared to the original hills, which did not have as much to offer. So that can be a challenge to find a balance between those two. And likewise, we ourselves have had some creative restrictions because sometimes, when you look back at what we've done so far, it would have been great to kind of start from a blank canvas, because some parts of Oblivion didn't age as gracefully, like the size of the Imperial City. I would love to make it massive, and I would love to make the world space maybe twice as big as well. But I think then it wouldn't be Oblivion anymore. Plus, it would also be a lot more work. But
yeah.
Trying to come up within the next 100 years, so pick your battles.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our final prepared question, I'm going to kind of request that, because some of you have kind of bowed out of previous questions, but this one I want each of you to try to give me a nice, succinct answer. So you're going to have 5 things that you choose. If someone were to give you 5 people to join your team tomorrow, what skills would you want them to have? I should probably pick one of you to answer first. Let's go with Nariel.
It's me. Right. So, well, we don't have a team per se, but I can say what kind of teachers I would love to have. Well, to be honest, we kind of need a little bit of everything. Concept art is great. To get another teacher, somebody who is very skilled in concept art is a bit hard to come by. It takes a little while to become a good concept artist.
Yep.
And yeah, and 3D artists as well. Somebody who really knows the ins and outs of Blender and asset implementation is very important. Um, we're actually good on voice actors. They're very good. But yeah, maybe 5 of those. Several concept artists, several 3D artists, maybe some implementation teachers as well. They're also good to have.
Okay. Bellatrix?
This answer will change depending on which project I'm answering for. So for Beyond Skyrim Roscrea, at the moment, what we mostly need are people who can do implementation. So to take the quests that we have written and get them in game, and also editors to help us finalize the quests that we're currently writing. They're probably the 2 main skills that we could do a bit more of at the moment. But then, yeah, things like 3D artists are always welcome. It's probably a little bit early for voice acting, but not too far away. And also a little bit of level design so that we can sort of do the final pass landscaping and dungeon polishing.
Okay.
I'm trying to think for Cyrodiil. So for Cyrodiil, we always need 3D modelers, implementers, definitely dungeon designers. We've got a lot of dungeons left to do. Yeah, they're probably the main people that we need. I guess from the perspective of actually working on a team. So one thing that is quite different about working on your own mod project versus a team project is it is kind of it's a collective vision. So people who are sort of happy to compromise and fit in with the overall vision would be really useful as well.
Okay. Rebel.
If I can choose 5 people to join my team, I would gladly take 1 quest implementer. We're doing okay on quests, but it never hurts to have someone with the skills to implement them on the team. I would definitely take at least 1 very good level designer. Similar to Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil, we still have a lot of dungeons that need to be made. Houses you can kind of go through in the span of, I don't know, an hour or 2, but a good dungeon takes some elbow grease. So I would be very happy with a level designer. And lastly, I think I would like to get 3 3D implementers, so people who can take the 3D assets and make sure they have the correct collision, are turned into NIFs, and are usable for us in game. That's also a pretty rare skill these days to find. So yeah, if anyone here is listening or watching the stream, please help.
Rob.
Yes, so similarly to the other teams, we would love some more implementers. Specifically for elsewhere, we need some architecture concept artists to help us to design the extensive temples that are dotted around the elsewhere landscape. And lastly is creature artists. Elsewhere is making all 16 first stocks, and that is a massive task. And the more people we have that can make creatures, the better. So that would be my wish list.
And the final answer before we move on to community Q&A, Zix.
Oh Lord, honestly, I think everybody hit on everything. I guess the one, maybe one unique sort of person we'd be looking for at Skywind is and like creature animators, I guess. We have a bunch of creatures that are basically sitting in implementation hell right now, waiting for animations because we could slap bear animations on like a Kwama, for example. It really wouldn't look all that great. So yeah, something like that. Anybody who loves NIFs, I love NIFs. Come on down, join any of these teams. Good God, NIFs are awful, and we all have to deal with them. So anybody who understands those are a welcome addition, I would figure.
Awesome.
I think that's almost it. Texture people as well. Texture people are huge. Right now, I have, for example, a tile set waiting in a placeholder state because we don't have textures for it yet. I'm not very good at making textures, but that's another area that we need people in.
Alrighty, so we're moving on to the community Q&A portion. We got a few questions in here, and figuring we got about 10 minutes or so to go through these, so if you can, try to be succinct. Let's start with, how do you choose what places need priority when it comes to development? So I'll open this up free range. Who wants to chime in on this?
I'll go with that. So the way that Elsewhere works is that we focus from walkabout to walkabout. So we have a roughly annual walkabout. We got one tomorrow. And for those people who aren't aware, and so we use that almost as a sprint. So we say, right, this year we're going to show off this. Next year, what are we going to show off? And then we work towards that as a common team-led goal.
Mm-hmm.
For Skyblivion, I guess we have a similar approach. Earlier this year, we started doing interior design a lot. So that made it a priority for us to make sure that all, if not most, of our clutter was finished. Similarly, at the moment, we are starting on remaking all the different cities. Because the overworld map is mostly completed at this point. So that makes it a priority for us to make sure we have all the interior and exterior architecture finished. So it really kind of changes from month to month and year to year on the overall status of the project and what bigger areas we want to work on. But at the moment, our biggest priorities are the cities and the architecture of them. Because our interior team and exterior team is now churning through those as quickly as we can. For next year, we'll probably have a lot of bug fixing ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else got about a 1-minute answer they want to throw in on that, or should we move on?
I can give it a go. So I think Cyrodiil works a little bit differently, but some of that might be that we're quite lucky now because we're quite big, so we can have a few teams working in different places. So the way we tend to do it is our landscapers and writers will go into an area first. So say like a town like Leowin. Obviously, we need people who've made 3D models. So those teams sort of work on areas first. So we might have a couple of different people working on a couple of different towns. And then what happens after that is interiors will follow along. So after writing and the level design, sort of exterior level design's finished, we'll come along and make the interiors. And then once we've finished, implementation will follow us and sort of bring it all to life. And so what we find is different bits of the team are working on very different regions. So someone might be landscaping, say Leowin, or I'll probably get in trouble if I say the Imperial City. And then actually the interiors team have spent all of this year finishing off Skingrad. So we're working on very different areas at once. But before we released Bruma, we were a lot smaller, so we had to focus much more on one area, and it's the whole team working on one area at once.
Right. Now, since you were just talking about Beyond Skyrim, I have a question here for the Beyond Skyrim teams. How interconnected are the various provinces you guys are working on? Will they each have their own story, or will there be an overarching story across Tamriel? That's actually kind of more than one question, but we'll see if we can sprint through it.
It's two. So yes, each province will have its own overarching story, but there will not be a Beyond Skyrim overarching story for a number of reasons. One, that would assume that everybody downloads every single mod and plays them. And two, from what I understand from a technical perspective, it's extraordinarily difficult. If it's possible at all.
Right. All right. I will presume that was the only answer for that question. And we will jump to, let's see. How do you choose what places need priority when it comes to development? This question is from Uber. Bellatrix, would you like to?
I could start off with that one.
Okay, yes, actually, Zix, go ahead.
I think it ties in with the other question about priority a little bit, but I guess I didn't get a chance to answer that one. But more so towards this, I think it depends on sort of what you have at the time available to you. I know a lot of development stems from sort of what the bottleneck is at the time. So, like if a 3D artist gets like, let's say like Velothi styled interiors finished, like that whole tile set, suddenly that opens up a bottleneck for level designers. So the priority sort of shifts depending on what work is being done, I suppose. Yeah, it's kind of hard to judge most times. Sort of when things are finished, you gotta kind of go along like a conveyor belt. Like 3D's done, so go on to level design. Level design's done. Okay, so slap the NPCs in. Let's throw in some voices if the projects have voices associated with them, and so on and so forth.
Okay. So it looks like we're really kind of nudging up against our 10-minute limit. So I'm going to go with one last question. This is from Emily Friedrich, and any of you can answer this if you wish. If you could give one piece of advice to a new modding team, what would it be? Looking back, is there anything you wish you had known when you first started out?
I wouldn't mind starting off with that one. Hey, Emily, Rebel Size from Skyblivion. I think my biggest advice I would give to myself looking back is don't underestimate the scope of your project. And in a similar vein, create a scope. Try to come up with a start and an end. Because if you're like Skyblivion, you have something to start off of. You have Oblivion. You have the original game, the original map, original locations. And that is more or less your template. If you're doing something from scratch, yeah, that's going to be your first challenge, is mapping that out, seeing how big you want that to be, and more importantly, how big you can make it. Because if you don't give yourself limits, you're going to be running around for a long time, making a lot of mistakes. I know that's what we did at Skyblivion at the start. We made some mistakes. A lot of them good, because in the end it led us to where we are now. But it can also mean, a lot of wasted time. So make sure you have a start and an end, and try to really figure out what you want those to be before you really get into working on your project, would be my advice.
I'd like to have a go at this one as well. So, because I actually started a modding project, which I'm not going to name, last year, and I would suggest that when you start, it's a lot like building a house. You have to make sure that you have a rock solid foundation, and I would also say that you have to make sure that your foundation is in place before you announce your project. Because as soon as you announce that you're doing something, people start to get excited. So you have to make sure that you've got everything in place. So you've got all your lore in place. You've got, as Rebel said, you've got the scope in place. Another thing that is extraordinarily important is that the people that you bring into the team, especially in the beginning, all have to be singing off the same hymn sheet. They all have to have the same vision of what you're doing in their minds. That's extremely important, because otherwise it starts to splinter right from the very beginning. So that would be my advice.
Mm-hmm. Next.
Ooh, me next.
Yes, Zix.
I've got one for this actually. It's short and sweet, but if you're starting like a new team, like if you're alone, it's a little easier. But if you're starting a new team, organize. Oh my God, please organize, because if you're not organized, you're gonna end up, you're going to do something, and then it doesn't go said that you did something until like months later, and then you go back and you're like, oh, somebody did this thing already. And it sort of gets really, really hectic if you don't organize. So have stuff down in writing, have stuff like on some application, if you're able to have something on like an application for you to sort of organize. Just please organize, put your papers like in order and everything. Oh Lord, it helps so much, so much.
Very cool. Bellatrix, Nariel, anything from you? By that I mean yes, you too, go next.
I have 2 pieces of advice. One of them's quite flippant, which would be don't announce release dates until you're really sure.
Yeah.
We learned that one the hard way. And I guess the second one is it's going to be a lot more work than you think it is. But don't let that put you off. So come up with the ultimate vision of what you want. So sort of the end goal is release a mod, decide what you want it to be, have a design document. Be really careful of mission creep, because the joy of working in a modding project is it could be absolutely anything. But the downside is it could be absolutely anything. So you could spend years and years and years just adding extra stuff because you can, but is that ultimately what you want? So have a really clear vision of what you as a team want, and then break that down into subtasks. So the end goal is release the mod, and have some medium-term goals. So say like get one town in development or one town finished, and then really short-term goals. It's like, so if we need to make this town, what do we need? We need a 3D model. We need someone to write the quests for it. We need someone to make the interiors for it. Break it up into tasks, because otherwise you'll just get overwhelmed with the amount of work that's involved.
Yeah, I completely agree. Everybody else has mentioned pretty much everything I would have mentioned, but yeah, create a design document. This is your Bible. Write everything down in it and follow it.
All right. Very, very cool. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this particular panel. Panelists, thank you very much for joining me. It has been incredibly informative and a great deal of fun. Not nearly so horrifically strenuous as you guys thought it was going to be when we were sitting in the green room, and you guys did very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you've been great, Trendane.
Thank you, Trendane.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Fantastic.
Coming up next, after a short intermission, we will have our next next panel, which is the 12 Worlds, which is going to be emceed by Captain Stu. And you'll be talking to the 12 Worlds panel, where they will chat with several of the level designers about using the creation kit to build the world. But first, we have a lovely intermission so that either people can go and get refreshments or can sit around and play this wonderful game that we have ready for you guys. And I will talk to you guys later on after that panel on the voice actors panel. So until then, take care and have fun.